Hello and welcome, and in this lecture we're going to learn about the preprocessor. Now the preprocessor is a compile time language built into C, and it allows us to control the way things are compiled. So for example, what I could do is I could say if def test and if, and then I could say void test. Now if you compile this, we won't have a function called test. We just won't have one because test is not defined. Do you understand? So the compiler will see this, it'll go through the code, it'll say is test defined? No, it isn't, so let's not do what's in here. That's what it'll say. Now if we do up here define test, then this code will be compiled. Now just to demonstrate this, let's do test here to call that. And if I go up to here and I do that, it compiles fine. If I do main, it works fine. Now get rid of define test here, try to compile that again, and look what happens. Oh, implicit declaration of function test, and then it fails to link, because the compiler never bothered to compile test because test is not defined. So hashtag if def means if the definition is defined, and the definition we're checking that was defined is test. So that's pretty straightforward, right? You can also do some pretty cool stuff with this. Like, for example, I can go define ABC 50, and now if I went integer a equals ABC, a becomes 50. So that's a brief overview of the preprocessor so far. You can do much more complicated things with this, such as allowing function arguments. So I could do something like ABC x and a, and then I can do and then I could call a function here maybe. So I could do printf I, and then I could go I again for two integers, and then here I could go x and a, right? And now if you did ABC 5 and 10, and notice how I didn't put a semicolon, it's because I put one here in my definition. But if you get rid of that, then we should put a semicolon. Do you get it? So if you compile that now and you run that, you can see it says 510. So what we've done here, we haven't created a function. This isn't a function right now. We've created a kind of macro function, a preprocessor function. So this is an ABC here is not actually compiled into our program at all. What happens is the compiler comes in, it says, okay, you want it, so whenever anyone does ABC and passes two values, we should instead replace this with printf and the values that they entered. So what happens is the compiler comes through, it sees ABC 510, and then it replaces it with this. Line 8. It literally replaces it with that. That's what it does. And that's why if you put a semicolon here, you don't have to put one here. For that exact reason. Because it literally takes this, replaces it with this, and fills in the values. So that's a brief overview of the preprocessor. It's very good for things like checking that certain values meet certain criteria at compile time, such as, you know, if you're doing kernel development, for example, you might want to check the actual kernel version meets a certain bounds, and then you can do things like that at compile time. So preprocessor is a very powerful tool, and that is just a small example of what it can do.